Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's day 3 here of San Diego Comic-Con. We're at the Skybound Lounge here at the Sparks Gallery, and we are joined by Shawn Martinbrough. How are you doing, Shawn?
I am
it's great
doing
to have
great.
you again.
Marcus, it's great to see you again. It's been a blast. It's been crazy, and just everything that San Diego Comic-Con usually is.
Yeah, of course, joined by Zeke as well. And I was even mentioning earlier that I was following, I follow you on social media, and I was like, Shawn, it looks like you have been very busy. Lots of pictures with lots of other creators, fans, getting ready to do interviews, etc. So you've been busy.
I learned a long time ago that usually we artists live a very solitary life. It's just us in our little holes, and we never really go outside. And when I do go outside, I got to document everything because I'm going to forget what the heck I just did, and it just goes by so fast.
Right.
And
dude, as gamers, we understand that completely.
Listen, that's why I had to quit gaming cold turkey. Like back, the last video game I played was Resident Evil 3.
Oh, that's
because it was just taking too. I mean, I was just playing that thing like too many hours out of the day.
Right.
So
right. It's like playing a 20-hour movie, kind of. It's
totally.
20
hours. 20 hours.
Yeah.
No.
Or more. Yeah. Sure.
No.
So today we're going to get some live art with you, which means you draw while we try not to totally distract you and ask questions. But I'm still always amazed at how well you guys are all able to do this, multitask.
Wow.
So, so I guess we usually have a little discussion on what to draw, and we had kind of 2 categories that we've been throwing out to the creators who have come up here.
Okay.
And we've got, of course, Zeke to help if you need some more ideas. But the first category was a favorite character or an inspiring character from a comic, whether it be a superhero or just a character from a comic that you'd like to bring to life here up on stage, or since we're kind of at the Skybound Lounge, any sort of a Skybound mashup, which of course you have a very popular one that you're going to be signing for later on today, which is Negan kills the Thief of Thieves. But
yes.
Either of those kind of.
Okay. Yeah. Let me see what I'm inspired by, because I have 3 that I could three that just pops into my mind.
Okay.
Okay. So I can think about, of course, something from Thief of Thieves, which is, that's my title. I always love drawing the lead character, Conrad. But then I'm really inspired after seeing that new Netflix trailer for Luke Cage.
Yeah.
Looks pretty hot by my man Cheo Hodari Coker, who's the EP.
Amazing.
And the trailer looked amazing, and I did a really fun Luke Cage miniseries for Marvel back in the day called Luke Cage Noir. So I'm thinking about maybe something Luke Cage inspired. But then again, I'm also kind of thinking about my time drawing Batman for DC Comics. Batman, you just never gets old. So
right, yeah.
Maybe I might try to just do something with maybe one of those 3 or all 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll just kind of let you go at it then.
Okay.
We don't want to put pressure on you, but we have about 30 minutes.
No pressure here. All this
no pressure at all.
Put 30 on the clock, starting now.
This is exactly how I work at home with all the lights and the microphone. Just right at home.
People milling around, music playing.
Oh yeah, this is exactly how my work environment is at home. So, but all right, so I'll get tracking.
Yeah, we'll let you get started. Of course, Shawn is the artist on Thief of Thieves, a unique book because it does have, not necessarily in the world of comics in terms of like lots of books have different writers, but that was kind of one of the things that you guys started with, is having different writers for the various arcs that take place and tell the story of the Paulson family and the crew and the thieves that are involved, etc. But you guys just released your 5th volume back in March, right?
Yep.
And I believe issue 33 comes out next week, right?
Yeah, I think 32 came out last month, so I think we usually drop around the 3rd or 4th week of the month.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, I think this is 33.
And this is also kind of good because it's sort of shifting into a new arc right around this period. And like I said, Zeke, we won't throw out too many spoilers, but there might be some new kids on the block that are.
I think the interesting thing
rivals.
about this arc, written by the great Andy Diggle, is that I think we're taking the story a lot more. It's definitely more international this time around. So basically, I think we have an amazing action set piece in downtown London. It was an amazing car chase. I got to sort of choreograph, which is really awesome. And we definitely have some new villains for Conrad to sort of go up against. These sort of Russian billionaires that just have nothing better to do than to just cause trouble.
you know. I guess.
Those wacky Russian billionaires, you know.
Now, what people watching don't know is that he sat down and immediately drew, like just sat down, whipped out the Sharpie there and started drawing to warm up.
Right.
And he, like, I was looking at it, and he was just drawing some dude in the audience, which I thought was so, like, just whipped it out. I'm just warming up. Like, artists, like, will make art. That's like anywhere, anytime.
We try.
Yeah, exactly, man. I loved it. I just sat there going, like, I thought he was just scribbling to make sure that the implement worked.
Well, you know, it's funny because like when you're an artist, like if you go, I always encourage all aspiring artists to take an art class, go to art school, and one of the things they teach you in art school is just contour drawing. So you're drawing what's in front of you and just getting it down really, really fast. And so that to me, I really love it. It's a really good training tool. I don't do it as often as I want to, but it's a very good way to sort of just get you to get the most important information down when you're drawing a figure.
Right.
You know.
How much actually, we didn't really talk too much about other than the fact that you've been busy, but do you do a lot of, like sort of quicker sketches or drawing for fans at conventions like this, or is it mostly just signings? Yeah,
I usually do signings. I mean, I don't do commissions. I don't usually charge. I mean, a lot of people tell me I'm leaving money on the table not by not doing commissions, but when you're kind of home, like stuck at home working all week, kind of like the last thing you want to do is go to a convention and just keep drawing.
Right. Right.
So, and plus I just enjoy sort of walking around, meeting other artists who I know, whose work I know, but I've never met them in person. It's good to sort of meet the fans person to person. And I'll do like a simple sketch, but nothing really like detailed or elaborate.
Right. Have you met some creators this con that you hadn't met before?
Oh man, I mean, I just walking around yesterday, I was able to meet the great designer Chip Kidd. Chip Kidd has designed like so many great books for like DC Comics and others. And I was just walking by and I saw him at his booth. At the booth, he was promoting a new Peanuts hardcover that it just has all of this great archival material from the Peanuts comic strip. And he was just sitting there by himself, and I'm like, honey, because my fiance was with me, I was like, honey, that's Chip Kidd. And so I just walked up to him, I was like, Chip Kidd, I'm a huge fan, and blah, blah, blah. And we got to talking, and that was really cool to meet him. Last night when we were getting ready to leave the our hotel, I ran into Mike Mignola in the elevator. I'm like, Mike Mignola, that's Mike Mignola. So that's the great thing about coming to the cons for me.
Right. Get to meet the fans, get to meet creators.
Well, it's really cool to hear stuff like that. Like, you draw more real life stuff, realistic looking things, and then you see a comic strip thing that you recognize the talent and that kind of stuff of other genres and other completely different things from your own stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just really cool to hear there's still real recognized real kind of stuff.
Oh man, yeah.
Between artists.
Definitely, and it's always great, when you get to see an artist whose work and it's just I've never met you in person, and I'm like, wait, I'm going to put the name to the face. That's just a really fun thing.
I mean, that to me is really interesting in the world of comics, because even as a fan for so long, I would fail at one of those internet quizzes that are here's 50 artists and writers, put the faces and then to the names, and I'm sure my success ratio would be pretty low, but coming to conventions, it's one of the things I do appreciate, getting to be like, oh, this is that person that brings that book to me all the time, and I think it's one of those mediums that unless you do come to a convention, you don't necessarily get other opportunities to do that. So
totally.
Big fan of that as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's a really fun. I was able to go down to Artist Alley, and usually whenever I come to conventions, one of my favorite things is to pick up art books from different artists that I just sort of stumble on, and I always go over to Stuart Eng Books. It's a great art bookstore. I should get money for giving them a plug like this, but I always get find really great foreign artists or international artists from the bookstore. So it's always great to sort of come and see what else you find.
You mentioned earlier you like to draw Conrad. He's definitely your favorite Thief of Thieves
I mean, he's sort of like the one main consistent character in the series.
Of course.
So it's just sort of fun to draw him, and I've really kind of made him my de facto Bond character because I'm a huge James Bond fan. So, you know, Conrad's sort of like the dapper guy that's always fun to draw.
Right.
So, okay, so Bond guy, quick question. You got to ask anybody who's a Star Trek fan, anybody who's a Bond fan, who's your Bond?
You know what? I grew up in the Roger Moore era.
Okay.
So I just believed Roger Moore. I just took him so seriously. Like, you know, now as I'm an adult, I'm like, ooh, that's kind of goofy there. But I have to say, Daniel Craig to me is like the best Bond. I think he's
interesting,
the best.
if controversial choice.
Is it really controversial? I mean, come on, like, you know.
I would say, like, I went back. You know, I grew up the same thing, Roger Moore. But I went back and watched the Sean Connerys, all those ones, and I understood what Bond was like. Everybody looks at Sean Connery as Bond, like most people. And then I watched, the Daniel Craig ones, and I went, you know what? He's pretty damn good.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the good news is that all three of them that you mentioned have something that every Bond needs, and that's just like that swagger, and that confidence.
He's got swag.
And, you know, and there you go.
Daniel Craig's got the swag. You know, it's funny because, like, I really like it's like the one Bond that now, you know, just after all this time has gone by, like when I look at Pierce Brosnan, I'm like, Pierce Brosnan's kind of a little soft. He's a little soft when you look at Pierce. And I was showing like my fiance, she's like, that's Bond? Because she's not like a James Bond.
Yeah.
She's like, he's James Bond. Then I showed her I showed her Timothy Dalton, and she was like, he's too soft too.
Yeah,
He's too soft.
That
She's
was
like,
the bad Bond era that we went through there. For a little
I think it was just
bit.
the haircut. I mean, he had that Eddie Munster do. You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't really hold up.
Some interesting stories and concepts, but yeah, I have to agree with you. It's not going here, so.
Yeah, but I think that it's really like fun in terms of drawing Conrad. You know, he's just really like a fun character to sort of draw, just because, you know, it's great to sort of. I mean, it's fun drawing superheroes, but it's a great exercise to sort of draw a lot of grounded things like fashion and different locations.
Right. I mean,
well, and they're not like limited by like a mask in showing expressions.
Right. And you mentioned like the car chase that you got to sort of choreograph, and you know, you get to do almost a more unique and I would say normal style of action in a way, right? I mean, people aren't necessarily jumping over buildings, but thievery and some of the heists that happen have their own set of action. And is that something that you really enjoy about that book in particular?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, Andy always writes like really fun action sequences for me to sort of figure out. And I always take it as a challenge. I'm like, okay, how am I going to sort of visualize what Andy is written? And for example, like I think the car chase is in like issue 34, and it was just really fun to sort of like, and it just worked out because he set it in London, and I happened to visit London like twice, visiting my fiance when she was working overseas, and I walked around, and when he was like, okay, this is where the car chase is going to be, I kind of said, okay, I kind of could visualize certain streets and neighborhoods that I had walked through, and I was like, okay, that would be like a really good location, and so when I was able to sort of, you know, get it down on paper, it really just came together. It was really fun.
Yeah. Now we're gonna get Zeke on. We're gonna get Zeke on some of the, you know, the upcoming trades. But I had to ask. You know, we talked about the fact that the writers have like changed from arc to arc, and you know, you are the constant of the book, right? Mm-hmm. You have so. How is that? Like, then you're taking the same characters, the same art, but a new story, maybe a new approach to some of the characters. Is that challenging, or is it actually nice because it mixes things up a little bit?
You know, I keep saying this, is that you would think that having different writers come on and it might be a little disruptive or a little bit jarring, but I think it's really worked out so well because even though our writers, Nick Spencer, James Asmus, and Andy Diggle and Robert Kirkman, all have different styles.
Sure.
It's been pretty seamless going from one issue to the next, you know, with different artists, you know, taking over. And I think they've all really have been very cool in terms of adopting my preference for only working with maybe 4 to 5 panels on a page.
Right.
So, like, honestly, like, I mean, I can see little differences between their writing styles, but I think that for the reader, I think it's been pretty smooth, a pretty smooth transition.
So just a quick update, well, just on the sketch itself.
So I'm kind of going from like Batman to like Luke Cage. Like my take on Luke Cage, because I always thought it was kind of goofy that he had that metal tiara. But when I did my miniseries for Marvel, Luke Cage Noir, I gave Luke Cage hair because I think it's kind of boring just to sort of have like the black guy with the bald head all the time. So I was like, let me give this guy some texture, some hair. And so like when I drew him, he kind of like had hair, a little bit more of like a broader build to him. Like when I did Batman, you really can't change that much because Batman has like a really pre-approved look in terms of his design. But I just had had Batman with more conservative short ears, just like the cape. Pretty, just I really didn't get too flashy with the cape. So
I like that Luke Cage. You mentioned you saw the trailer. Is that and you had I know you'd worked on Luke Cage arc in the past. Are you excited at all for the series coming up?
Listen, they had me with the shimmy shimmy yeah use ODB music that was playing in the trailer. As soon as I heard that, when I heard "Ooh Baby, I Like It Raw," I was like, take my money right now. Take my money. I mean, I think they did a really good job in sort of just putting that together. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it.
I know when we had a chance to share the stage last year too, one of the things we talked about amongst Paul and Josh and yourself is sort of the seeing a lot of the comic world bleed over into movies and television, and compared to even last year, there's Outcast that's on television now. Of course, Jessica Jones aired and Daredevil, like a lot of Marvel properties. The movies continue. I know there's been discussion for a while about Thief of Thieves, and I just, as a fan, I'm still hoping that happens. I mean, don't worry, I'm going to keep reading the book forever, but I've always felt like it's good source material would work really well. But are you still excited to see that your world sort of breathing into the other worlds? And
I am definitely excited to see how they would translate Thief of Thieves to TV. I mean, it was supposed to happen a while ago, and I know that there was some, there were just it just didn't work out at AMC. But for me, it just kind of gives me more time to create the world.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if it had dropped when it was supposed to drop, I only probably would have had maybe a handful of issues.
Right.
But now we have 32. 30, actually 36.
Is what.
Yeah, we have 36. We have a whole world of characters that the show can pull from, that I'm really excited to see, get visualized. And even if it doesn't become a TV show, I mean, we just have for me, drawing 36 issues straight of a series is a career highlight for me.
Yeah.
Is this the longest that
Definitely.
by a good margin?
Oh, please. Oh, yeah. I mean, it just, and just to have the total freedom to sort of create this world, to create the looks of characters, the way I want. It's been really fun.
How was the back and forth for you and the writers? I mean, as far as when you send them a picture of a character, this is what I was thinking. I took your, the words that you wrote and I kind of did this. How does that work for you?
Well, honestly, it's pretty low maintenance. I'll get a script and I'll sort of, just pretty much draw it. And I think that Andy and I have a real good rapport where he sort of trusts whatever I do, whatever I kind of come out with. So I think that, and then I think in the beginning, before I got started on the series, I would do character designs, sort of suggesting what I want to do. And Kirkman was, always very supportive, very hey, I love it, keep going. I can only count on maybe less than one, maybe two fingers, the amount of times that Kirkman has actually asked me to change something. And usually it didn't really have to do with the story-wise. It was just sort of another reason. But yeah, but it's been really fun. And honestly, I think, so I usually just sort of as soon as I get the script, I just go. I just draw it, and usually everyone's pretty happy.
Is there, Shawn, are there usually then two types of scenarios when it comes to sort of artist relationship to books? Charlie mentioned that a lot of, we had Charlie Adler on yesterday, he's a lot of times Kirkman's just this is what they look like, and I draw what they want me to. Mm-hmm. And I guess as a creator, if I was a creator, I'd always want to be I want to try to have some say in it because you know,
Right, you
like
want
I-
a certain amount of autonomy.
So would
Yeah.
you say that you know you have some healthy input with the visuals of characters specifically?
Honestly, I have a lot of input. I mean, like, for example, with this new story arc, Andy just said, like, there are these two Russian billionaire brothers. And that was it.
And so you could
That was
just
it. So I'm just like, okay. It's a completely wide open space for me to sort of create. I know that coming from an art background, you want characters to look different and distinct. So I'm like, I want the two brothers to look different. So I want one to maybe be tall and thin, the other one to maybe be short and sort of stout. They dress a little bit different. Like the tall guy is very expressive. Like I'm like, all right, when he's talking about his master plan, he's always like, like with every character, he'll be like, you know what I mean? I want you to do this. I want you
super
to
intense.
He's
Right,
very intense. Like in every panel, he's just like, yes, yes. And the other character's just like, yeah, we'd like you to do this. We'd like you to do that. And that's not in the scripts, but that's pretty much like what I brought to it visually. And Andy was just like, I dig it. You know?
What you just described, I've done like, you know, within my hometown, like shitty improv comedy for a long time, and it kind of reminds me of that. Like, okay, now you're two Russian billionaire brothers, and go. You know,
You just kind of have to
Yeah.
go with it.
but the freedom of that, like to say like that's all you get, and all the ideas that could come from that, just and it's more ideas I would imagine than getting a very descriptive like.
Yeah, I mean, and different writers write differently. Like some writers will really get detailed with, you know, how they see the character, how they want the character to look or excuse me, or dress. But I think Andy and I have been working together for so long now that he just pretty much trusts what I'm going to come up with, and he knows that I'm pretty, I'm pretty focused on the script and making his words come to life. So he knows that like whatever I come up with, the characters are going to be pretty well thought out in terms of why I'm having them do, you know, or why I'm having them look a certain way.
And talking about Conrad himself, you know, I think one of the appealing things is like, hey, I'm the best thief, but I want to give it up, and now I'm going to thieve other thieves, and you know, constantly dealing with sort of both sides of that, the bad guys and the good guys who are kind of coming down. In sort of the history of Thieves, every issue and as the story progresses, I have to say, like, he is kind of one of the biggest thieving badasses there are, right? I mean, I feel like you guys have done both visually and in the writing like an amazing job of creating this character who I look like and like, yeah, oh yeah,
Well,
like,
thank you, Marcus.
yeah, I really think you did a great job with that.
I think it's really interesting though because Conrad is actually a little bit. There's a goofy aspect of Conrad. Like even though like I kind of
absolutely.
even though I kind of draw him Bondish, like he's always very like well dressed and everything, but he gets his ass kicked a lot.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
he doesn't really kill. Like I mean, there was a one story arc where he really did kill a lot of people, but that was like a real departure for the character. For the most part, you know, he doesn't really shoot people. He kind of figures out a way of sort of, kind of like I guess a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible way of sort of getting out of a situation without actually killing people.
I think that's why he is the badass. I mean, you're right. He gets his ass kicked. He takes a lot, but it's always seems to be like, how is he gonna? Oh, that's how. Like you're so brilliant, you know. But yeah, you're right. He's certainly like many characters as well. I think why we love comic characters. There's vulnerabilities there. His own family, you know, it's very similar.
Yeah.
In
I
the
tend-
superhero world, like you can't know my identity because that puts you at risk. And if you're a criminal and thieves and the good guys and the bad guys are going after you, put them at risk, and that does happen.
Yep.
And I think that's why I tend to gravitate more towards the non-superhero comics because of that very reason. Like there's real real shit they have to deal with, you know.
Right.
And it's like real life. Like I'm not like I can't shoot you with my laser eyes. I actually have to figure out how to do it without that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that Andy's really good at sort of like he's really good at like, you know, just casual dialogue between characters, creating like really good character. He's really good character conflicts. It's something that's very fun for that fun to illustrate whenever I get a script from him. And he's very economical. He doesn't overwrite the stories. You know, it's a really fun thing.
getting a lot of positive comments on the live art here in the chat as well. So
Oh, great! My family's tuning in. Okay, cool.
yeah, yeah. They're liking it. So all right, yeah, you have about 5 minutes. So
Okay,
you
cool.
know, just and you've been doing some panels already, and you have a panel later today, right?
Yes. Well, I'm going to be doing a signing at the Skybound booth, and I'm also going to be doing a panel, the Jeppy Museum, the Jeppy Entertainment Museum in Baltimore. It's an amazing museum. If anyone's over on the East Coast, you ever get to Baltimore, it's right next to like the Baltimore Orioles Stadium, and they have such an amazing collection of comic book memorabilia, like Superman #1, Batman. It's an amazing museum. I cannot, I can't promote it enough, considering I don't own it.
And you,
Yeah.
and you said you're gonna be there.
Yes,
next,
yeah.
or-
They actually have like a showcase, and they're gonna have some original artwork of mine. Some of my Thief of Thieves artwork, I think, is gonna be
Oh,
there,
wow.
and some Luke Cage original work. So yeah, I'm gonna be on a panel with some other artists I think that are featured in the show, and that's gonna be at like I think 5 o'clock.
Great,
5,
great.
yeah.
So you're currently working on Thief of Thieves, done Luke Cage, Batman. What else have you worked on in your career?
Well, I took some time off from comic books briefly to do an art book called How to Draw Noir Comics, the art and technique of visual storytelling, which just sort of let people inside my process of drawing and how I compose shots, how I use shadow and light for dramatic effect.
Right.
And that was a really special book that really kind of took people inside of my work process. Because all the time people ask me like, hey, like how do I get into art? How do I learn to draw? Or I have a kid or whatever. How do I get them into this? And I was like, it would be interesting just to put it in a book. So that was really fun. Yeah, and so honestly, like so that was really fun to do. Like I did like a Captain America special for Marvel that was released during the first Captain America movie. It was done in conjunction with the US military, so it never came out in comic book stores. It only was available in military bases
Interesting.
around the country. And there was like a 1 million copy print run, which was awesome. So that was really cool. Yeah, just like I said, I've drawn Luke Cage, Batman. I worked on a X-Men Morlocks miniseries that very few people ever saw, but it was with an up-and-coming, very little-known writer named Jeff Johns. And this is way back in like 2002. And we created this really funky, eclectic group of mutants that were set in Chicago. And the way I'm seeing everything getting adapted, it would be awesome for somebody in Hollywood to sort of adapt that miniseries. Because it was a great it was like a different group of the Morlocks set in Chicago.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah. Same. All right.
Looking good. I think you're definitely going to hit perfect here in that clock, but you're
All right.
welcome to kind
How
of
much more time do I have?
keep going.
How much?
What?
I'll just
You
keep-
have exactly about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just keep refining.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I was
The
going to mention
refining
this.
process.
What I liked about this, immediately noticed after you started drawing the third character, is how much different the styles vary from one to the next. Like you got thick lines, you've got like massive detail on Conrad, and minimal detail on the Batman. Is it? I mean, do you do that on purpose? Is it purposely style choices from one character to the next?
Well, I think it's tricky just to be drawing with a Sharpie.
Yeah,
It's tricky because, but also, but I do think that whenever I try to draw, I try to contrast thick lines versus thin lines.
Okay.
Because I think that just gives the art more depth, makes it more interesting. So, if I do like a really thick line here, I'll try to balance out with like a thin line here. And so that's sort of like, just me sort of playing around. But usually when I ink, I'm usually using a brush, a Sharpie, a Crow Quill, a technical pen, which gives me a lot more control over the line. Plus I'm usually not talking with all these lights.
Right.
I can really sit down and just kind of focus. But now I'm splitting my attention between drawing and you guys and this.
I know.
No, speaking
we're
of that,
definitely the bad guys.
No,
We
not at all.
are.
It's a challenge, but that's the fun thing about being an artist. It's a challenge to sort of try to make it work.
Of course.
Wherever you are.
Right. Now, are you a guy who draws like Zen style, like no distractions or anything like that, or do you have like loud music playing or?
Not loud music, but I usually have the TV. The TV is always on. I'm a huge news junkie.
Okay.
So so I am just like, I'm just absorbing all that, and I'm a huge movie and television buff, so I'll put something on that I can watch movies and TV shows like people listen to songs.
Right.
So like I was just telling someone that I'm a huge House of Cards fan, so I will have that show on and just
in the background.
I could just, because every panel is like a picture. Like I'm a huge J.J. Abrams fan. JJ, come and talk to your boy. Come and talk to me. JJ, where are you? I want to talk to you. But I mean, I'm a huge J.J. Abrams fan, so like I'll put on like his Mission Impossible movie. I'll put on the Star Trek movies. I'll put on those Aliases. Just and
Love
I mean, so then and that's like, and those Star Trek movies are great. The second one, was problematic.
I'm a fan. My wife's a super fan.
Yeah, a little problematic, but in terms of like a fun sort of story and pacing, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But you kind of put yourself into a box where you're going to try to do the con as a surprise.
Right.
But everyone knew that was Khan.
Right.
I mean, my grandmother knew he was Khan. Right. She's like, "What the hell's Star Trek?" But I know that guy's Khan. You know what I mean? So it's just like, but I'm always sort of like absorbing things when I'm drawing. It's all inspiring.
Well, it looks great. You've done an amazing job.
I feel like I boned this whole interview thing because I'm mesmerized. I love watching this. That's why I asked to be on here every time there's an artist actually doing live drawing. But I clam up because I'm just like, I'm so in. I get kind of zen, like watching you do it.
Listen, you guys know who Bob Ross is?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, of course.
I could put Bob Ross on.
Everybody in chat, Bob Ross, put your emotes
Bob
on.
Ross.
Put your Kappa Rosses in.
Bob Ross. Let's pour some out for Bob. But I mean, honestly, if you put Bob Ross on, like, if someone were to ship ISIS just Bob Ross shows, there would be peace in the world.
Right.
I mean,
it's totally
so zen. It's
yeah.
how could you be angry watching Bob Ross?
You can't. It's
I mean,
physically impossible. I tried. I was angry coming home. Bob Ross is on. I was like,
You just want to hug somebody. You're like,
right.
yeah, like what was I angry about? Bob Ross.
Yeah.
Sean, thank you so much for stopping by today. Absolute pleasure to have you up here sharing your art.
totally,
Yes,
man.
thank you.
Thank
Be
you very much,
still
man.
attending a few other panels today at San Diego Comic-Con, but we really appreciate. Don't forget to check out Thieves number 33 comes out in stores next week, July 27th. So make sure you check it out. And the most recent fifth trade, Zeke. We're going to get you caught up. But
And,
Sean,
follow me
again,
on
thank you.
Instagram. People have been harassing me for years to join Instagram. I finally did.
There's your
Bob Ross,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, Bob Ross. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
We've
it.
got Chris Dingus coming up next for Manifest Destiny. Don't go away. We'll continuing coverage from the Skybound Lounge here at Sparks Gallery coming up right after this.
Nice.